Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So I was having a look at the latest Steam hardware survey from like July of this year, and I was actually really shocked to see that the most popular card is still the RTX 3060. Actually, to be fair, if you include both the 4060 and the laptop version of the 4060, I'm pretty sure that that does beat the 3060. But if you go on the hardware survey, you can kind of see the 3060 is just barely holding on with like around 5% market share. So I actually have a 3060. This one here, this is from like a pre-built Acer. I've featured it on the channel before. But I thought, specifically, I've looked at this card on Linux, and I had a few people on that video telling me that, you know, Linux performance with NVIDIA is not as good as Windows. So I thought, why don't I just drop it into my current PC and see how the card stacks up in a bunch of games that have come out over the last year or two. I'm not really expecting much of this card, but I think if we keep the resolution at 1080p, we might get a decent result. So let's drop it into my PC and have a look at how it performed. So the first thing that we actually need to do is go and install the NVIDIA drivers, which is actually pretty self-explanatory. You just go onto their website and download them. So my PC does actually have a RX 9070 in it, so I had to do a display driver uninstall. Once I installed the drivers and set up the NVIDIA control panel without the software that they use, the first game that I tested was Spider-Man 2. And obviously I just mentioned this, but for every single game that I'm going to be talking about today, I'm using 1080p resolution because the 3060, even back when it came out, was a 1080p card, so that's kind of what we're going to be doing today. But on Spider-Man 2, I kept everything on the high preset. At 1080p high settings, we averaged at about 60 FPS. It did drop below that occasionally, but yeah, it was around 60 FPS, so that's like perfectly playable. But I thought, you know, why not just throw on DLSS quality? And that's what I'm going to be doing on all of these games today, is trying it with and without DLSS. With DLSS quality, we went up to 74 FPS average, and actually, to my eye, the game looked quite a bit sharper and nicer than it did without DLSS. So yeah, I think that Spider-Man 2 is a complete win. The next game that I tried is Silent Hill 2. Now, this is a Unreal Engine 5 game, so it had quite a lengthy shader compilation. Once I loaded into the game, and you can see here the settings again, I kept everything on the high preset and put it on native 1080p, and we averaged around 53 FPS. So some people obviously are not going to be happy with anything below 60, and that's completely fair. But I think that the game, for a slower paced game that doesn't need like instant response times, I think that this is a decent FPS, but I did want to see if I can get it above 60. So I tried it with DLSS quality on, and I did notice in this game especially, the image quality did look a bit worse with DLSS. We did average around 67 FPS, so, you know, we're well above 60 now. So yeah, that's another game that we can pretty easily handle at 1080p high settings. So the next game that I tried was Alan Wake 2. Now, this is a game that's pretty difficult to run on any system. It even has problems on my RX 9070, but so I didn't really expect anything amazing here, but the game actually defaulted to high settings, and I was having some problems. Like, it even dipped below 30 FPS, which is not acceptable in my eyes. So I turned the settings down to medium, and with those settings, we averaged about 36 FPS, which is still pretty low. Like, I wouldn't really say that that's exactly playable. So I tried DLSS quality, and the average FPS went up to about 45. So, you know, that's still not super playable in my opinion. It's definitely better than it was at 36 FPS. One thing I will note though is that this game has a stuttering issue on my RX 9070, whereas on this 3060 it does not stutter. So I don't really know what's going on there. Yeah, the game, whilst the frame rate is low, it's not stuttering like my 9070 does. So that, I guess that's something to consider. Moving right along, the next game that I tested was Dragon's Dogma 2. Now, this is actually quite a CPU intensive game, especially when you're in the cities and NPC packed areas. When you're in the wilderness, it's a lot more GPU heavy. So that's what I did. Again, this was a very lengthy shader compilation. This actually took a few minutes. Yeah, I threw the game on 1080p, just like every other game, and got into a fight just to see how it ran. And the game ran at an average of 53 FPS at 1080p. This is with the high preset with ray tracing off. And that's super impressive, to be honest. Like, that's pretty playable at native 1080p. Like, I would not have any problems playing this. Obviously, in the cities, it's going to be lower, but that's because we're running into like CPU bottlenecks. I have a 5800 XT in my system, so it's not really, it doesn't really like this game very much. But yeah, I thought, well, why not just try it with DLSS anyway? And the game ran even better. I mean, the image quality is quite degraded, so this is another game where DLSS does look markedly worse than native. But yeah, we averaged about 73 FPS, so that's an additional 20 FPS here, just from using DLSS quality. So I mean, either or really, like either of these are a decent experience here. The next one is Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. Now this is actually a really well optimized game on PC. I tested this on Linux as well, and it ran pretty well, but it runs better here on Windows. So at 1080p high settings here with DLAA, the game averages about 67 FPS. So that's actually more than playable, right? That's really good, and the picture quality is fantastic. This game is actually a really good looking game. I think it has sort of built-in or baked-in ray tracing. So the fact that this card, this 3060 can do ray tracing as well as this. Obviously there are specific ray tracing presets for Indiana Jones, but yeah, this card is able to do a game with baked in ray tracing really well. It gets even better when we throw on DLSS. This is a game that looks fantastic with DLSS. I didn't really notice any visual difference, and the performance uplift is even greater. So we're averaging about 84 FPS here, which is really, really nice, really impressive. Honestly, I think that this is a game that you could probably get away with running at 1440p with like DLSS balanced, you know? This is one of those games that's just super well optimized for PC. So yeah, it doesn't have any problems with this GPU. The final game that I decided to test today is Stalker 2, and this is opposite to Indiana Jones. This is a pretty poorly optimized game, so I wasn't really expecting a lot. And yeah, the shader compilation took about 10 minutes on this game. It was a very lengthy shader compilation, and it also like defaulted to 4K, which was a bit strange. Even though my even though I set the monitor resolution to 1080p, the game still wanted to run at 4K, so I immediately turned that down. And actually, on the auto detection settings, it immediately just put everything on low, so that did not bode well for me, and I was not very confident about the performance of this game. But I decided to turn up the settings to medium because I thought that would be probably a bit better. At medium settings at native 1080p, we were averaging 57 FPS, so that's like super surprising. I was not expecting this game to run as well as it did. And the same story can be said for DLSS. With DLSS quality, it ran at 72 FPS, which is like a very respectable result. I mean, the game looks kind of grainy and muddy and doesn't look very good at these settings, but the fact that we're able to play the game at this frame rate is actually really surprising. So yeah, guys, I'm actually really impressed with the performance of this card. I think that it really surprised me just how well this thing holds up. I think if you're willing to use DLSS in some of those games that perhaps don't have the best performance, then you're going to have a pretty decent time. Now, obviously, I wouldn't recommend going out and buying a 3060 like today unless you can get it used at a good price. You're probably better off getting like a 9060 XT or even like a 5060 Ti or something like that. But if you still have a 3060 and you're not really wanting to upgrade just yet, I think you could probably hold out for another year or two. It's quite obvious why the 3060 is still such a popular and widely used card. Is because it still has a little bit of power, especially at 1080p, which is actually still the most used screen resolution, right? I don't know, let me know if you guys are still rocking a 3060. I want to know what your experiences are. Obviously, I didn't test every game under the sun today, but I think I tested a wide variety of games. But yeah, if you found this video entertaining or informative in any way, let me know, and make sure to like and subscribe because it helps the channel a lot. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.